loud, I feel like, oh, maybe I could sue Warner Brothers. Thank you for that flash of insight. Hi.
Hi, Misha. I was just wondering how you found out you got the role of Castiel.
Well, it was in a dream. I called Eric Kripke and I said, hear me out, I had this dream. And you didn't cast somebody else, but you cast me instead. And Eric said, no, that's not what we're doing. I don't remember. Nobody has ever asked me that question, and I assume my agent called and said, you got that role on that dumb show. And I have no idea. I have no recollection. I do remember auditioning for it. That I remember. I went in. It was very secretive. It was like a Marvel movie. They sent sides out. You know what that is?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, you're obviously not a professional actress. Sides are the scene or 2 scenes or 3 scenes that an actor gets printouts of for the audition. So it's the material that you audition for. You go in and you do a couple of scenes in the character that you're auditioning for, and the casting director reads the lines of the other person opposite you, and they're just standing across the room. So you're basically acting opposite somebody who is putting no effort whatsoever into their scene. They're just reading it, they're bored out of their minds. There's usually a producer or a director sitting next to them texting on their phone while you do the audition, and you're like, is anybody even paying attention? Why am I here? But I got the audition sides. I prepared. It said it was for a demon, so I prepared in a very sinister character. I've never seen the show, so I didn't realize that demons are actually just like regular people on Supernatural. So I did this weird, sinister character. And then I went in and I did the audition once. Eric Kripke was there in the room along with Robert Fulbright, who was the casting director. And Robert, and we did 1 take, and Eric kind of looked at Robert like, I don't think so. And Robert did something that Robert has always been a champion of mine. He's a casting director, and he's always bringing me in for things. And I tested, which means got really close on a bunch of pilots with him. But he's always trying to get me apart. I can tell he's like a fan. And Eric, so Eric sort of gives this little glance at Robert, which I read as, get this kid out of here. And then Robert did something that he did a couple of other times for me, which was just the sweetest thing in the world, which is he jumped up, he's sitting on the couch next to Eric reading the lines, and he jumps up and he says, I'm sorry everybody, there's a couple of other people in the room. I'm sorry everybody, I can't deal with this. And he goes across the room, he opens the door to the hallway, and he says, can you please keep it down out there? It is very distracting. We're trying to do an audition in here and nobody can hear themselves think. He slams the door. Of course it had been whiskey quiet. But it was his way of giving me a second chance. When otherwise the producer would have been like, don't let the door hit you on the way out, kid. And so then I was in there and Eric's like, well, we're stuck with this kid. Might as well tell him, all right kid, it's an angel, not a demon. So just do it again, but that way. Because they were trying to keep it a secret that they were adding angels to the show. They didn't want it to get out there in the fandom that they were adding angels. So then I was like, that's literally the opposite of what I prepared for. And so I just did this very wooden deer in the headlights performance. And clearly Eric was like, that's it. That's our Castiel. And so the character was thusly born. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lucia, and I'm from Corning, New York, really far from here. And my question is not about the show, it's more about your poetry book.
Okay.
Yep. And it's some things I still can't tell you. So my favorite section...
Thank you for that little plug. And for those of you who don't know the title of the book, it's some things I still can't tell you.
So my favorite section in your book is hope, joy, running, and other good things. I live in the boonies, so I spend a lot of time outdoors. So the most profound poem that affects me, and I like to read it every time I feel down, is Suddenly, because it talks about, just being in the moment. Do you have any favorite? It could be anyone, it could be from any poem from the book, which really something that you go back to, or the experience, or the inspiration that it has profoundly influenced you, or you hold close to your heart.
Well, there are a few poems in there that are kind of like that poem Suddenly, that are just about like pausing to appreciate the small thing in life. I think there's a poem in there, I can't remember what it's called, because I changed the title so many times. I Wish for This? Is it titled I Wish for This? I don't know what it's titled. Anyway, it's the I Wish for This poem, or the last poem, which is, both of those are about my kids, but they're also about that noticing something in the moment phenomenon. I think that those two probably tie into things that have a lot of emotional impact for me, which is my kids and that reminder, that reminder to pay attention in the moment. There's this term in art called poetic disruption, and it's where you're going along in your normal life and then something pops up that like surprises you into paying attention in a different way in a moment. And those two poems are about that, but they're also about being in a fog, like going along on autopilot and resisting the gifts that life hands us along the way, and then suddenly being reminded, oh, wait a minute, this is a fleeting life. I better pay attention.
Thank you, Misha.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julia. I was wondering if you like watching what you've acted in on screen, or is it weird to see yourself on screen?
Well, I find myself very attractive.
Not your seat. Well done.
Everybody is like bringing, oh my God, I'm so hot. I'm so sweaty. Just leave me alone. So, everybody is coming up. I'm flop sweating. I can't tell if I'm overheating or just embarrassed. Everybody's coming up to me and saying like, oh, thank you. You really are a fan. For those of you who can't see, it's got $100 bills on it. It'd be cool if you had one of these that was made out of $100 bills. That'd be a real fuck you to poor people. Keep coming up to me in the photo op line saying, can you do a look like Pedro Pascal? It's like suddenly this guy has worked his way into the collective consciousness as this, let's admit it, aging sex symbol. And everybody's like, well, Misha, you're aging. Why don't you try to be like Pedro Pascal? Pretend to be like Pedro Pascal. Someone brought a picture of Pedro Pascal into the photo ops. Man, that guy would really clean up at a convention, I'll tell you. Holy hell. What's that? That I don't know, I don't want to know. What are we talking about? I'm watching myself on television. Yes, but only as foreplay. It's how I get in the mood, you know. I'll say, I'm sorry, do you mind if we just turn on like something from season 6? The one season I'm not in, isn't it? 7? Okay, I don't know. I never watched the show. I used to be absolutely, I got on this show 24, which was like a big phenomenon. I was so out, I didn't even have a TV at that point. Like I was not watching television at all. My agent was like, hey, we got you this audition for 24. And I was like, oh, cool, what's that? And my agent was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? It's the show that everyone is talking about right now, Misha. But anyway, I got on that. Then we bought a television, and then I invited friends over to see my first episode, and I thought this will be fun. And then it started, and I realized, oh no, this was a terrible idea. There's nothing that I want to do less than watch myself on television, and even worse, watch myself on television with my friends around. So then I became incredibly nervous and uncomfortable, and I just started going to the kitchen and cooking for everybody, and like, oh, I wanted them out of my house, and I want to destroy that television. It was really uncomfortable for me. Now, like I started watching Gotham Knights with the kids. Time has passed. I've become a nerd to the pain of watching myself. Actually, that was the beginning of the arc, and now it just brings me immense satisfaction. And so now we're watching Gotham Knights, and I came on the screen, and I was like, with the kids, and Wes gets up as soon as I come on and starts doing fucking push-ups. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Get back up here and watch your father on television. I'm famous, watch me. I'm trying to instill the right values in them, but it's hard. Frustrating.
Hi, Misha. My name is Katie. I know you touched on it earlier, but I just want to say that Castiel's confession scene was revolutionary, and I don't think that especially in this fandom, and I believe it will live as longer than any of us, I think, honestly. I mean, it's going to go down in history. But my question is, if you could choose any message for any of your characters that you would want everyone in the world to hear, what would it be?
Well, I do think that Cass's message was largely one of acceptance, and he early on averred that sentiment. He said, for instance, I'm utterly indifferent to sexual orientation, and I think he genuinely meant that. Like there was zero value judgment from him about how someone chooses or how someone is in the world, and I think that that's a really important message. And ironically, of course, I think it took Castiel a very long time to actually get to that place within himself. But when he did, and when that clicked for him, when that like intellectual understanding that I think he had finally penetrated it to the reflexive, to his own self, then it was like transformative and on an even like spiritual level. And I think that is this incredible challenge. Like we have a society that is in general, in spite of what we see, like with the pendulum swinging in the other direction, I think we are moving forward greater acceptance and greater tolerance and an openness for people to live as they want in the world. And yet, the challenge that we're all faced with is actually having that acceptance within our own selves. And Castiel ultimately, I think, ended up being an example of that, and I think that is really important. I do wish that we could have a lot more of that in our inner worlds and in our outer world, but if we all keep at it, eventually we'll get there, I think.
Well, thank you for being a big part of that, Misha.
Thank you. Hi.
I just met you, you're lovely. My question for you is about love languages. So mine is words of affirmation and quality time, but I was wondering if you think that Castiel has one, what you think that might be, and what yours might be if you feel comfortable sharing.
Castiel's love language is getting to ride in the front seat of the Impala. For him, that just means the world. I think mine, it's funny because I have I think I have different, I express love by making things for people, and it mostly manifests in cooking. And I do it for my kids. You know, I'll cook for them every day, several times a day. On the weekends, I cook 3 meals a day. But even on a rushed school morning, I'll get up and make waffles and from scratch and chop up fruit, and make it pretty, and drizzle it with maple syrup, and then they'll still be whatever, getting dressed or putting on their shoes or dragging their feet as kids do in the morning. And I'll say, hey kids, breakfast ready. And then if they're not there a minute later, I'll say, you little shits, I worked so hard to make this nice hot breakfast for you and you're letting it get cold again. So sick of you. And that's how I express it. I'm not sure what it is receiving though. I'm not sure what it is that I should have an answer for
Something to
that.
think about then.
That is something to think about. I'll try to find an
I
answer
do
for you.
the cooking one too. I'm very into nutrition. I'm a dietitian, so I food present everything nicely. And I understand.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Okay, good. I'm glad you agree. Do not serve the Twinkies. Hi.
Hi, I'm Amy. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I wanted to know where, I know you have lived in several different places. I wanted to know where was your favorite place you have lived, and maybe some cool, any touristy spots you like from that place, or little city that tourists wouldn't know about. That makes sense?
Yeah, that does make perfect sense. Thank you. I really liked living in Washington State. So when I was working at Supernatural, I was commuting across the border from Bellingham, Washington, up into the southern Vancouver area, and it's actually just such a pretty part of the world. I was living in Southern California for a long time, and I actually have this weird love-hate relationship with Los Angeles. Los Angeles has has so many brilliant people, so many great artists, so many forward-thinking people. It's also just a mass of traffic, and all of the negative stereotypes that you have about Los Angeles from afar are abundantly true. We used to have this paper, it's no longer in existence, but it was the LA Weekly, and it was the thing that you found out about happenings around town. And I first got there and I opened it up and I was like, oh my God, every single ad in this paper is for plastic surgery. It's that's it. So LA was a complicated place for me, but it was also just super cool, where you could kind of imagine anything and make it happen. That was really quite lovely. And also there's this different vibe on the West Coast than on the East Coast. In New York, the struggling, starving artist is a motif that everybody holds up. It's of the paragon of self-expression. And in LA, all of the artists are super rich. They're why would you want to be a struggling artist? I want to be a rich artist. And there was something kind of cool about that too. You go play pickup basketball around the corner at the high school on a weekend and be playing basketball with all of these successful writers and set designers and people who are actually finding a way to make a living, making believe, which is a cool environment to be around. So I loved LA in some respects.